for the, what day is it? 20th of July. Who will be on the board for the Utah Jazz, and who should we be talking about in the draft world? Plus, we'll look at the free agency. John Hollinger saying more about what numbers and who he thinks might be available. Plus, Game 6, Bucks and the Suns. A breakdown of all of it, plus a live audience. It's all coming up on today's edition of Locked on Jazz. But
It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
How are you? I'm David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA insider. This is Locked on Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz, giving you insight, expertise, geeky numbers, and hopefully making it way better to be a Jazz fan each and every day. Thanks so much for tuning in. Apologize for the show yesterday. I told you this week's going to be a little wacky, so doing the best I can. Coming to you from a random hotel somewhere in the semi-Pacific Northwest, but it's not really, more the Rocky Mountains. Hope everyone's good. Fun day for me today. I want to share with you and want to say thank you. It was on this day in 2009 that I was named the radio voice of the Utah Jazz. So it's been quite a little fun run here for the last, I guess that's 12 years now, if I can do my math right. And want to thank you because it's been amazing. It's everything the story I think you've probably heard as I told my dad when I was somewhere 9, 10, 11, driving the old Wasatch Boulevard before the 215 was in, that I want to be that guy, and that guy was Hot Rod. And so it has been everything I ever dreamed of, and wanted to thank you for that. So, and your support, and we got this little podcast that now comes along with it. I didn't know about that when I was 9, 10, or 11. I didn't tell my dad. I wanted to do that. All right, chat room is open for you throughout the day as we are live right now on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch. Again, we'll eventually be just at YouTube. There are some questions of whether keeping it live all the time is going to be the right move. There's some algorithms with YouTube where they actually don't like live videos, and so it doesn't get as promoted as well unless people see it. So we'll that's a little bit of a challenge we have coming up on the program. I do want to mention on draft night, Locked On is venturing into a brand new world we've never been into. It's pretty incredible. On draft night, we will be live out of the WFA studios in Dallas, Texas, with a live TV show that will air on Locked On NBA YouTube channel, will air on the OTT channels and Amazon Fire and Roku channels across the company that owns us, Tegna. YouTube Locked On NBA is probably your easiest. We'll also stream on Odyssey's app. Chad Ford will be in studio along with Raphael Barlow. They'll both be there, hosted by John Corrales with all of our local experts. An unequaled show, really. Nobody else in the country can go to a local reporter on every single draft pick on the way that we will that night. So excited to do that and have that show for you. Please mark it down. Get out of your regular habit, but if you're a cord cutter, this one's perfect for you because it's available for you. All right. It was really interesting as we opened up the ultimate mock draft, which is up in our 5-day mock draft experience. So make sure you get that as well. The ultimate mock draft is available right now. It's a different feed than Locked On NBA, by the way. So it is literally called Ultimate Mock Draft. So go grab that. And the ultimate mock draft, it was interesting. Richard Stamen of Locked On NBA Draft opened up the show by saying he has more guys. He has more than 30 players set as a first-round pick. And I thought that was really, really interesting to hear that kind of idea that this draft is this deep, because so much of the conversation about this draft has been these incredible top 4 or 5 players, and then the feeling is that it drops off pretty considerably after that. This was a different perspective. This was a perspective that later on, and with the 30th pick in this draft, in the mock draft, I'll be honest, I end up trading it, and I get flamed pretty good for that. for the fact that there's actually, players available that are of worth to get. So let's look at that for a second. And then I think the interesting question, just from our standpoint, I don't think you should draft this way, but is there a position that you think is easiest to join in? So I think there's no question, like, our biggest position of need is a backup point guard. Just another ball handler. If we're able to re-sign Mike, hopefully, then, we know he's not going to play all 82 games, and you have an opportunity, if you have a young player who's actually ready and good enough, they'll get a lot of time, and maybe they'll be ready for the playoffs. The problem there is I think it's a big leap to decide to think that you can actually end up with a player who's a rookie who's able to contribute in the playoffs. To me, that seems like a big leap, that somebody comes out of college, plays, and then as the playoffs move, like, we're not watching a lot of young kids in Phoenix, Milwaukee right now. And we didn't watch a lot of young kids other than Terrence Mann in Phoenix, LA. And we didn't watch a lot of young kids in Philadelphia, Milwaukee. Like, you just, as the playoffs move on, like I've used Desmond Bane as the example. Like, he looked fine against us, but you didn't have a feeling he was going to be able to make bigger contributions as the series went on, or if Memphis had advanced. Like, it's a really big difference. So, I do think we need a backup point guard, but I also think if we end up with a backup point guard, I don't think it's a player who's going to be ready and available to contribute and help when we hit playoff time. The next question is, do you think that a wing player or a big would be able to? Now, obviously, we would hope Udoka Azubuike is able to do that Azubuike can be that, or Faves. But I think, with luxury, the potential of having to move Derek due to luxury tax is real. Like, we've kind of talked about that, and none of us want to admit it, but it's real. It's very hard to have a $40 million center and a $9 million center, neither of which that can play the four. Like, if your $9 million center can also play the four, that's an easier thing to handle because you can get some minutes out of them there. But right now, for us to have $50 million locked up in centers, it's a difficult thing. So that's a real possibility. I don't think we want to draft another center. Like, you'd hope that Azubuike can step forward and play. And you don't want to become the Seattle Supersonics when they drafted Johan Petro, Robert Swift, and Mohamed Sene in 3 straight drafts, and then none of them could play. Side note from past history. PT draft, post-traumatic draft syndrome. Then you start talking about like a wing player, and do we think that you can get a wing player at 30 who's actually going to be able to contribute? They'd have to be better than Mioni, better than if Elijah Hughes, we think he can play, as Eugene does in the chat room. He has to be better than those guys. And so it's an interesting thing as this pick. It's really why I traded the pick in the mock draft, is because I didn't actually think I could find someone who I thought could help us in the playoffs. And the other choice is to do a little bit what we've seen Phoenix do, which is you laid in the back of your roster with veterans that are willing to play part-time. And break in case of emergency, or break glass in case of emergency, they're ready to go. So let's start it. I think that's the interesting question as we look at this draft. It's like, do we really think there's a chance at 30 that you can go get somebody who can help you? Or are you better off using 30, clearing salary, acquire second-round picks for the future, for future trades, or something of that nature? So in the mock draft, you'll see what I do is I move it for a bunch of seconds and figure, we acquired Matt Thomas. Phoenix used one for Torrey Craig. Like, that's what people did with the draft and with those picks. And that's the kind of thing of what I thought was a better future use for that. So when we come back, we'll take a look at those players we actually think will really be available, and look at who they are, get their names, get some information about them on the draft, and then I'll start breaking them down over the next week. I've got a 5-hour plane flight today, so I'll watch some games, do some more numbers rundowns for you, and throughout the week, when I can get the shows out, I will, there's a possibility that I get a show out for you tomorrow, and there's a possibility that I get a show out for you Wednesday, and there's a possibility I get a show out for you Thursday. Oh, wait, that's Wednesday. That's the same days. And there's, maybe we'll get some done every day the rest of the week. Possible. So we'll do that. We'll look at those kind of each position, according to boards, what should be left, what should be available, and get your thoughts. Today's show is brought to you by my friends over at Murdoch Hyundai, located at 4646 South State Street, also located in Logan and in Linden. If you're looking for a car right now, the North American Car of the Year is the Hyundai Elantra. I drove it for a while. It was absolutely fabulous. I have the Sonata right now, and it is terrific. It's a little bigger than the Elantra. It's souped up a little bit. The car I was driving, was North American Car of the Year, was amazing. It was only $26,000. Had every bell, every whistle you could imagine. The SUV lineup is great with the Santa Fe, the Tucson, the Kona, as well as the beautiful Palisade. Hard to get your hands on those right now. Let's so if you're going to go down and visit any of those three locations in Logan, in Linden, or in Logan, Linden, or 4646 South State Street, please feel free. Email me first at dlock09@gmail.com. That's dlock09@gmail.com. I'll set you up and get you for a meeting with whichever salesperson is right at that market, and give you the VIP treatment. Today's show is also brought to you by our good friends over at Intercap Lending. Steve Carter, Intercap Lending. They do amazing, amazing work. It's so great. I had 3 emails over the weekend of people wanting to meet Steve, and I just get excited about the experience they're about to have. The reviews that have come in for Steve Carter over the year are consistent. It is always the same thing. It is simply unbelievable customer service, responsive, on time, helping you get it done. He's done 2 loans for us, and I am not the easiest person to get a loan done with. He did our COO as well. We're very different people. We're probably different he's probably difficult because of his detail. I'm different because of my scatter. And Steve got us both done. It was just unbelievable. Steve Carter's our own personal loan officer at Intercap Lending at 385-800-8528, 385-800-8528. Or again, you can just email me at dlock09@gmail, and I'll set up the meeting with you with Steve Carter over email and get that done. That's dlock09@gmail.com. So make sure you check that out. Intercap Lending, NMLS number 190465. For more information, visit intercaplending.com. Again, either call Steve Carter at 385-800-8528 for the best customer service experience you could ever imagine, or feel free to just call me directly or email me directly at dlock09@gmail.com. All right, let's look at the draft prospects here a little bit. Ultimate Mock Draft is up and out. I mentioned it earlier. I just want to make sure that you remember to follow it and subscribe and jump aboard and listen to it. And thank you for doing it. All right, I think when you look at the point guards, Cade's going to be gone. Davian Mitchell gone. Sharif Cooper gone. Jared Butler. Anyone you see being invited to the green room, gone. Like anyone invited to the green room, gone. Trey Mann likely gone. Jaden Springer likely gone. Now we move into some possibilities. So the first one is a kid out of Virginia Commonwealth, Nashawn Highland. He ranks kind of 30th, and he's a sophomore. He's 6'3", he's 176. And his first year in the league or in college as a freshman, he had minimal impact, played about 20 minutes, 9 points a game, shot 43% from 3. And then this year, he went nuts. He took 8 threes a game. He also took 5 free throws a game, which is kind of a great number. He only had 2.1 assists, so if that's your point guard, it's not a natural instinct for him to move it, and he averaged 20 points a game. So his name's Nashawn Highland. If you're looking for point guards, you look at kind of the big games he played. He opened his year against Utah State, so Scotty G remembers him because they beat Utah State and he had 23. They did not make the tournament or do anything of that nature, so you kind of go back to his middle of the year performances and try to find like that game against, somebody who was pretty good. They played a moderate schedule, as did everyone this year because of COVID. So it's hard to find kind of that game against a marquee player in which he played. That's always what I like to look and watch, is see like what other prospect did you play, and how did you do? And the best team they probably played all year, the only ranked team he played all year was West Virginia in the second game of the year. And he was 5 of 16 and 0 of 5 from 3 with 13 points. And after that, they never played another ranked team during the year. So it's hard to get that kind of grasp on who he is and on what his role is. ESPN hasn't even done any analysis on their draft. This is where, quite frankly, Kevin O'Connor and the Ringer deserve a lot of credit because Kevin O'Connor is really well detailed and breaking these guys down and does really incredible work year in and year out. So, give him credit. Feel free to check that out a little bit. Staying with the kind of looking at the guards, and probably, when you look at this, point guards are such a different world than they once were. There's a kid out of Alabama named Joshua Primo. He's 18. He's 6'4". He's 190. I don't know that I think he's on the board at 30. He's probably more of a shooter. Shot 38% from 3, averaged 8 points a game. He's not like an unbelievable body at 6'4", 190. He's not a natural ball handling player. I think he had a negative assist to turnover ratio, and he is doesn't seem to come out as an elite athlete. So that's one. Miles McBride is a 6'1", 195-pound, 20-year-old out of West Virginia. So that matchup against West Virginia, Miles McBride against Nahshon Highland, that's an interesting game to kind of go back and watch because those are two players that actually literally are on the draft board kind of in the same spot with each other. And as we mentioned just a moment ago, Highland did not have a particularly good game in that game. As I haven't watched that game. It's on my list. Miles McBride might have actually just gotten the best of him. McBride 6 feet 220 in that same game against VCU. McBride was not that much better. He was 4 of 11 in 24 minutes. His best game he played Gonzaga, so that was up against Jalen Suggs. He went 4 of 14 with 10 points. Against Kansas, he went 6 of 16 with 19 points, and then he played a bunch of games against Cade Cunningham and Oklahoma City in the Big 12. A bunch of their games, that's just a wacky season also, but there's a lot of good ranked basketball that Miles McBride played at West Virginia because of the conference that he was in. He's more of a natural playmaker. He had 5 assists a game as a college player, comfortable shooter off the bounce. If he's probably not, at some point you always have to remember, like if they're 30th on the draft board, then they're not, if they're a great ball handler, passer, and an elite athlete, they're not going 30, even if this draft is deep in some ways. Josh Christopher is another one. He's a 19-year-old, 6'3", 220, 6'3", 215 out of Arizona State. He really scored it at times this year, but he only shot 31% from 3. They love to talk about his defensive upside, but he's only 6'3", 215. He's an interesting player. Being Pac-12, I think we all know him a little bit. He is able to kind of create his own looks. It'll be interesting to see whether that's a good thing or a bad thing in college. He only shot 31% from 3. And so that, I think, at least in my book, makes me kind of wonder a tiny bit of whether or not when it's great to be able to create your own shots. It's better if they go in. Like there's the simplest, most ridiculous analytics to it, but that's it. He's a better athlete than the players we've talked about before. You would kind of think of him as elite athletically. And so we'll see on him. Continuing kind of down the list of, depending on just if we're looking at the point guards, and I don't think I'd classify Josh Christopher really as a point guard at that point. We get to a kid out of Louisville named David Johnson. Johnson and by being at Louisville, you're getting some marquee talent. He's probably a little further down most people's boards. He's a little bit more defensive minded at 6'3", 203. He's like physical, 13 points a game. Did shoot 39% from three. 3 assists a game, which is not great, but he's a decent pick and roll player. And got to be a better shooter than he was his freshman year. So he seems to be heading in the right direction. And has, played at Louisville. So we can keep that thing. I hesitate here because these guys are their 30th pick. So, right, there's always a flaw. You hate to criticize them. The next point guard you'd look at would be Jason Preston. He's out of Ohio. So, again, you have a little bit of this game of like who's he played. He's 21 years old. Pretty big-time year. This year he had 16 points, 7 assists a game, shot 39% from three, but he shot sub 60% from the free throw line. So that's usually the better indicator of like what you're going to be able to do as a player. And if you look at his 3 years in college, his first year he did nothing. He scored 6 points a game. In the last 2 years, he really exploded. He shot 50% from the floor, 40% from three. He was a good free throw shooter until last year. So there'd be a lot of scouting that has to be done there. Again, though, we have this case of by being at Ohio as he played top teams. Well, the interesting one to me is the November 27th game against Illinois. He's against Illinois 6. They have an NBA caliber point guard. He drops 31 points and 8 assists in that game. Now, that's the last time he plays a ranked team for the entire year until they get to the West region where he plays Virginia, and he's a little quieter. He has 11 points, goes 4 of 7. They do win that game in a surprise, if you recall. And then they go to the second round and they play Creighton, and he ends up having a brutal game. He goes 1 of 10. So hard to tell. I mean, you have this one kind of highlight game. If you go watch him against Illinois, he looks absolutely fabulous, and you love every second of what you're seeing. All right, we'll continue. That's kind of our look, I think, at the point guards that are on the board for the Jazz at 30. We'll look at a few wings and a few other names for you. We'll take your questions, and Hollinger had a few notes on free agent value that I'd like to get to today. If it's possible. Today's show is brought to you by Rock Auto. Rock Auto, no need for you to go into a brick and mortar store and find out how much more you can pay. I mean, why choose to pay 30% or even 50% or even at times 100% more than by going into a chain store or a car dealership? Rock Auto is a family business serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years. It's the exact same price for a do-it-yourselfer as it is for a professional, and the price is always reliably low. They have everything you need from brake parts, tail lamps, motor oil, even new carpet. It's an old school, easy to navigate website. Check it out at rockauto.com. And when you check out, please write in Locked On in the How'd You Hear About Us section so they know who sent you. It's amazing selection. It's reliably low prices, and it's all the parts your car will ever need. Today's show is also brought to you by our friends over at betonline.ag. If you're going to do some sports gaming, we do it with our friends over at betonline.ag. They've got all the fun in-game lines, Major League Baseball futures they have up right now. The World Series favorite continues to be the LA Dodgers, followed now by the Astros, then the White Sox, the Padres, and the Giants. So the Giants have moved up to 5th with Donovan Mitchell's Mets sliding behind the Red Sox right after that. The division futures are interesting because of the great race going on in the AL West between the Giants, Dodgers, and Padres. And the Dodgers are now minus 250. Giants are plus 275, and Padres are plus 575. Ben Kapsick, Locked On Giants, whole show the other day was why the Giants actually should be worried. Tonight, the Milwaukee Bucks are a 5-point favorite to close out the ball game. 5-point favorite to close out the series. By the way, the Olympic lines are up starting here shortly. Czechoslovakia is a 17-point favorite over Iran. Nigeria is an underdog against Australia. And U.S. is a 14-point favorite against Rudy Gobert on July 25th and France. So keep an eye And feel free to play any of that if you want to. NBA futures are also up available at betonline.ag. Use the promo code Locked On, and you get a 50% welcome bonus. That's right, free money, 50% welcome bonus at betonline.ag. All right, I want to get to some of your questions, and I want to touch on a few things. But I do want to, like, other players that could be a wing player that might be available. Brandon Boston out of Kentucky. He was a big-time recruit, goes to Kentucky, 6'5", 190, and kind of got lost in the mix. It happens. Like, is he the next Emmanuel Quickley? Is he the next Devin Booker? He's a really neat body and athlete at 6'6", 188. Austin Reeves is a wing out of Oklahoma. He's 23 years old, a redshirt senior. And so, that's kind of the opposite play there. He only shot 30% from three last year, so it's hard for me to understand, but he's an 87% free throw shooter, 18 points a game. He's kind of got a knack for the game is what they'll tell you. Also, possibly on the board, but I think probably gone. I actually think anybody else we're talking about here is probably gone on the board of guard players. Usamayu out of Illinois is a possibility, 21, 6'3", 194. He had a pretty good year at Illinois, so that's another name to keep an eye on. So those are some of the names for you. I just kind of want to run down that. Look at it, keep an eye on it. There's another G League Ignite guy that doesn't get a lot of mention. His name is Deshaun Nix. 6'3", 225. He's a natural point guard, not an above the rim guy at all. So I don't know that I think you're looking for athletes at some point in this process. All right, let me jump over. Hello from Faz from Sri Lanka. He wants to know if we can sign and trade Mike Conley for Damian Lillard. And the answer is probably not, because we can't sign any of our trade. Well, actually, by that point, we could trade some of our draft picks, but that would have to be like Portland would have to want to do that. And when you already have CJ McCollum, I don't know. I don't think that would be high on Portland's list. And then the other person would have to do that is Mike Conley. So we don't actually control where we sign and trade Mike Conley. Mike Conley would sign and trade. If we sign and traded Mike Conley, that would be you'd have to, he has to agree to it. So that's the part of that I think you're maybe forgetting. Joseph says we need aggressive and risk-taking front office people. Our current front office are playing to not lose instead of playing to win. How would you back that up? Just for interest. Like, what would be your example that says that is true? Like the Mike Conley trade where they gave up a lot to go get a point guard? Would it be the trading Dante Exum for Jordan Clarkson is playing it to not lose? I think they're, and I don't know what an aggressive and risk taking could also send you to the very bottom of the barrel if you're not careful. So I think, it sounds good. It sounds flashy, Josh or Joseph, to make that kind of comment about but I'm interested in what it is that you think that they should have done, or what move that could have been made, or how they went and tried to go get Mike twice, got it done. I think that's, I just want to know if that's reality. Del Toledo says, thank you. And, Ben bails me out. It's Ayo Dusomu. Okay. Yeah, I've had a hard time with that. Make sure you go grab the ultimate mock draft. Let me go back to Hollinger. I said I wanted to share this. I thought there's an interesting. Here are some of the players that he had as minimum players. So if you're trying to get a minimum player next year, he had a few guys he mentioned I thought were interesting. Lou Williams, which I don't think we're interested in. Ish Smith, 33 years old, 6 feet, and he's played 11 years in the league. Never been very efficient offensive. Frank Ntilikina. He shot 19% on 2-pointers last year, John Hollinger points out. This is why these guys are the minimum. Jeff Teague, Alfred Payton, Dennis Smith Jr. He's only 23. Brad Wanamaker, who was so bad last year and so good the year before. Brandon Goodwin, who actually was pretty good last year in Atlanta. He's restricted, though. Are some of the players that are available likely for the minimum. All kind of point guards. Interesting. And then there'll be a million centers available for the minimum too, because that's just the way the league works now. Like that. So interesting. He had Alex Caruso making $12 million, TJ McConnell making $12 million, Spencer Dinwiddie at around 13, Kendrick Nunn, who I'd mentioned, at 11, Dennis Schroeder at 11, Derrick Rose at 10, Reggie Jackson at 9, which means I think he ends up back with the Clippers if that's the case. Goran Dragic at 7, Patty Mills at 7, Raul Neto at $6.2 million is his valuation. Interesting. Good for Raul. Hope that's true. All right, that wraps us up today. Thanks very much for jumping in. Thanks for hanging with me. Andy says, what are the chances we lose Conley for nothing? That would be bad. Yes, that would be bad. What are the chances? Chances are he has some other place he wants to go that's willing to give him cap space, and he signs, and we are unable to do a sign and trade to get something out of it, and all we get is a trade exception. That would be the worst case scenario. And Brady says, Neto! We all love Raul. Have a good one. He was in town the other day, actually. My daughter was somewhere, and Raul was sitting across from him at the coffee shop. All right, hope you guys are good. Talk to you soon. And, oh, wow, this is worthy of a debate for tomorrow. I would take Towns over Gobert. What you give up in defense, you gain in offense, and come out better, in my opinion. Wow. How a playoff series makes us forget everything we know. Have a good one. This is Locked On Jazz. Make sure right now you go grab the ultimate mock draft and listen to that. Get ready. Day 2 is in the books today. Have a